And joining us now in our Canberra bureau is the opposition spokesman on employment and workplace relations, Senator Eric Abetz. Thanks for being there.
Good evening, good to be on the program.
Does the coalition welcome the fact that 46,300 jobs were created last month?
Of course we do. It's always good news when you hear that Australians are getting jobs, but this blip on the radar is after 1 year of flatlining of employment figures, and it's the first time that Labor's got some good news on the employment front after having made the boast that they would create 500,000 new jobs over the next 2 years. That was Wayne Swan's boast in last year's budget, and today's figures are the first indication that they might start actually growing jobs, but having said that, nowhere near the target.
OK, but you would have heard Bill Shorten earlier this evening say, today Australia has more people working than at any other time in our history. Now, you must give the government some credit for bringing unemployment down to 5.1%, by the sound of what you just said.
Historically, we know that Australia grows its population, so the working population also grows. I know that when the Howard government left office, we had unemployment at 3.9%, so in comparative terms, Labor still has a long way to go, and the sort of complacency and self-congratulations that we heard from the government in question time and also from Mr Shorten this evening indicates an arrogance and complacency that this country simply can't afford. Sure, acknowledge that we have less people unemployed at the moment, but we still have a real task ahead of us when this past month of January and February we have seen jobs being shed left, right and centre.
Well, I'll come to that, but just to go back to the logic of what you said earlier, if this is the first sign that jobs appear to be growing, how can the government be criticised for an avalanche of job losses? Because, I mean, the truth is, I think we've lost about 3,000 or more jobs in certain sectors since late last year, but we appear to have created 46,300 in 1 month.
We appear to have these figures bounce around. Let's not forget that the last month's figures were the worst in 20 years. So that is the comparison that we're dealing with. But look, any Australian getting a job is good news, but can I say it is very cold comfort for the Qantas workers, for the Pacific Brands workers, who also today were told that they'd be losing about 100 jobs.
Yes, let's talk about that, because although those particular 100 jobs are going down to Melbourne apparently, so they're being transferred to another state. But to help stem job losses, which are clearly coming in vulnerable sectors, the car, the steel, the aluminium sectors, should government subsidies be used to keep these industries viable, at least while the Australian dollar is at record highs?
Why would you want to even talk subsidies at this stage when you know you're going to be imposing a carbon tax on them? The best thing to do is to remove the carbon tax from the steel industry, the car-making industry, the aluminium industry. We know that imported
But can I just
cars...
interrupt? These jobs that are being lost now, and I think this is acknowledged, for example, by the aluminium industry, have nothing to do with the carbon tax.
These companies are taking preemptive measures. It is quite right and proper for them to do so.
You're saying preemptive measures in advance of the carbon tax? Are you saying that what they're saying is not true? Because basically they're saying they're under tremendous stress with a record high Australian dollar.
Tony, nobody is doubting that the carbon tax will make the very bad situation they are facing even worse. And that is the climate in which they have to deal. That is the climate in which they have to make decisions about job prospects. And that is why we are having these difficulties in the manufacturing sector in particular.
But are you seriously saying that manufacturing industries are currently sacking people as a preemptive strike in advance of a carbon tax?
It is right and proper for companies to make adjustments and plan for the future.
But do you think is that what you're saying they're doing?
There is no doubt in my private discussions, and I'm not going to divulge any further, that is part and parcel of the thinking. We have been told, for example, that Qantas is facing a $100 million per annum bill in relation to the carbon tax. We know that for Australian-made cars, it will make them $400 per unit more expensive in comparison to imported cars. That cannot help the Australian automotive industry in any way, shape or form.
But strangely, Holden, for example, is giving wage rises to its employees because of an industrial relations deal where they're getting more productivity from their workers.
Well, that is what Holden says, but the union actually is bragging that there were no productivity increases, so we still have to get to the bottom of that assertion, because there is now pressure on Holden to justify why they've provided such substantial wage increases on the back of government assistance. So on the one hand, you've got the company saying that there is productivity enhancements, and the union bragging that they were able to negotiate this without productivity enhancements. So we'll have to get to the bottom of that.
Eric Abetz, time to do that tomorrow, I guess. Thank you very much for being there tonight.
Thanks a lot.